Evan Digman, who is the co-founder of Bare Bones Beer, who passed away on Friday from injuries sustained in a car accident. He and his business partner, Adam, played... Please be seated. So we're going to, first of all, for the last time, you're going to hear me say, welcome to Lewiston, the second largest city in Maine, but the city with the biggest heart. And I want to start tonight by recognizing some outgoing counselors. So I'm going to start with the counselor from Ward 1, Jim Lewiston. And so there's a lot that I could say about these three accomplished individuals, but I'm going to try and keep it brief in the interest of time. Plus I have some stuff I want to say at the end, so I don't want us to be here all night. So Jim, it may surprise some folks to know that Jim and I have butted heads on many issues, even though we seem like we're in the same camp. But Jim is a passionate and fierce advocate for the issues that he cares about, and he rarely backs down. And he has been a wonderful voice for the more vulnerable populations in our community.
Thank you.
Is that too fast for you? Okay. And then next is Counselor Beam, Jolene. And Jolene has been a calming presence on the council. And with all of the heated conversations that we've endured, I've been especially thankful for that. So Jolene truly listens to her constituents and is thoughtful in her consideration of all sides of an issue. And last but not least, Counselor Marcotte, and I don't think it will surprise anyone to learn that Mike and I disagree on more things than we probably agree on, but I've always appreciated the care and thorough nature with which he approaches public service, and he asks hard questions and stands by his convictions.
And Madam Mayor, there is one more that has to be done.
Oh, there is?
Yes. And Kristen was originally elected to the council in November of 2013, re-elected in 2015 and 2017, and was elected as council president in January of 2016. She's currently the longest-serving elected official in Lewiston. Didn't realize that myself till I went back and looked. Kristen became the city's mayor in March of 2019 upon the unexpected resignation of former Mayor Shane Bouchard. Not everyone knows this, but those of us who work closely with Kristen can testify that it was never her ambition to be elected mayor, and she regularly refers to herself as the quote-unquote accidental mayor. Although not seeking out the mayor's job, Kristen has worked hard to meet the obligations of the office while continuing to fulfill her obligations as a city councilor. She's performed double duty and has performed those duties well. She has always brought to her position a willingness to listen to everyone and a strong desire to find a way to help them with whatever problem they faced. She's been a great ambassador for the city, and her catchphrase, which you heard just a minute ago, Lewiston, the second biggest city in Maine, but the city with the biggest heart, perfectly epitomizes her own approach to serving her community. So, Kristen, it's my pleasure to present you with this plaque as a small recognition of your contributions to the city. Whenever you see it, I hope it will bring back fond memories of the work you have done and the people you have helped.
So I just want to finish up by saying thank you, Councilors Lyson, Beam, and Marcotte, for your dedicated service.
Acceptance of the minutes for the November 19th and December 10th, 2019 meetings.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor Lyson. Public comment period, so any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government that are not otherwise covered on the agenda. And we allow 3 minutes per speaker and a maximum time at the start of the meeting for all comments of 15 minutes. Does anyone have something not on the agenda that they wish to speak about? Okay, we'll close public comment period.
All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Councilor of Ward 1.
Agenda item number 1.
Item number 1, public hearing on an application for a new liquor license for Yvette's Casino, 413 Main Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new liquor license application for Yvette's Casino, 413 Main Street.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. Any discussion on the council? To the public? Back to the council? And you just want to, roll call vote,
Roll
yeah.
call vote.
Call roll.
Councilor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Item number 3, order approving the establishment of the Saxon Partners Residence at Great Falls Tax Increment Financing District and Program, and approval of a designation of a tax increment financing district and credit enhancement agreement. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to open and hold a public hearing on the proposed Saxon Partners Residence at Great Falls Tax Increment Financing and Program.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilor LaJoy, seconded by Councilor Pettengill. Any discussion on the council? A comment they'd like to make? You can either step to the, Link, did you want to do a?
Well, I think I'd like to give a brief presentation on what the TIF is all about, how it works, and then open it up for the public so they have something to react to.
Okay, does that work, Kathy?
Would be my
Okay, great.
preference. Okay. This is a project that has been in place since 2018, I think is when we were first approached by this in the spring. An exciting project. It's on the former Pineland lumber site. The Saxon team is here. I've got Brian Leahy, Tom Greco, Anthony Armstrong, and James Bass, real estate agents, the attorneys, the principals, some of the principals at Saxon are here. And the project has evolved over time. We've had contract rezoning to allow them to get the density they needed. They came saying, we're going to build market rate housing. We're excited about it, and we don't need assistance from the city other than we would like some public infrastructure to be installed in the neighborhood. The public infrastructure is somewhat tired in that area. We would like to repave Avon Street. We'd like to have a sidewalk installed along Avon Street. We see Holland Street as the primary thoroughfare up to Main Street and the hospital. We'd like to see sidewalk improvements along that. And during neighborhood meetings, when we first proposed this project, the residents really said, look, West Bates Streets and Summer Street are also really needing some assistance. So this has been through the planning board a couple of times. You folks just approved the contract rezoning, allowing all 245 units to be built on the former Pinelands lumber site, the 10 acre, right on the river, 10 Avon Street. But as they really started getting into this and went to start trying to find financing for it, they ran into trouble. And that's really when they reevaluated the project, came back to the city and said, look, we'd like to build this project, but we cannot get the financing to allow it to go forward. They were looking to get some equity partners who were looking to bring money in, and when they had had those conversations, this was it's an unproven market. This is a unique property to do 245 units of the caliber that these will be. It's really the type of apartment complex that institutional investors will invest in, but it's an unproven market at this point. And so as they tried to put together the money for this project, they found they couldn't do it without really reevaluating the project. As they got deeper into it, they realized that a big part of the numbers that was making it difficult to make the returns on investment for the investors work was the tax burden on it. At which point they asked the city to provide some of the taxes that would be paid back on it. Ed Barrett did a great analysis earlier. They're looking at after that TIF reimbursement is being paid, it will really be on par with other taxes paid by most multifamilies in the neighborhood. So what they asked for was a 63% TIF. The city council negotiated with them, asked to see if we could drop that percentage, split it at a lower percentage in the second 10 years of the TIF, and the numbers just didn't work for the financing. So the council was really faced with, we either provide some support to this project or we let it go. At that point, we started negotiating the details of the TIF agreement. So let me get into some of the where it's going to be and some of the numbers associated with it. This is a map of the Saxon. On the left-hand side, the original AV, that stands for Original Assessed Valuation. It's $552,800 taxes. Based on the pro forma of what expected revenues from the project will be, City Assessor Bill Healy estimates that the assessed valuation after development and change, subtracted from the 20 million, and that's how you get to that captured assessed value of just shy of 19 million. 760 changed the mill rate over the course with the market. So coming back to the taxes generated, it's 562,000 of taxes. You take 60 to a little over $7 million over the course of the 20-year TIF. Works. It was $373,750 is what we expect it will cost to repave the length of Avon Street and to improve or install sidewalks on about 750 feet of Holland Street, as well as on West Bates and Summer Streets. So that debt will be incurred for about debt, which means we take the total amount borrowed, divide it by the term. So each year you pay down 10% of your principal, but you only pay interest on the amount that's still outstanding. So over time, you're $86 in projected tax revenue. And if we did not go forward with this project, tax increment financing is it allows you to shelter from the city's total municipal valuation, which the state uses for various funding formulas. The amount the city pays in county taxes is the more municipal valuation you have, the greater your ability to pay. So you end up paying more in county taxes when your value goes over time, because you've got a greater capacity to pay your own bills. So the way sheltering works, the last slide I have for you. Oh, it's not the last slide. This is, these are the details. Top level, top row says credit enhancement costs. That's the 63% reimbursement back to Saxon. The public project costs, it really actually part of the state DECD application where they want great. For those who are less familiar with the neighborhood, this shows where those improvements will be made. So again, right by the river, to the left of where it says Avon, that's where the 245 units will be built. The length of Avon Street in blue, we'll see both sidewalks and the street repaved. And then West Bates and Summer Street up to Bridge, sort of wrapping down around the southern end of that. And on the northern end, that's the portion of Holland Street. Project and how revenues will flow. And at this point, I would suggest, I'll take questions or you can open to the public.
So other questions on the council before we open the public hearing?
I have a comment.
Councilor Lyson.
Yeah. Obviously, this is a project because there's a need, obviously for it. I think a projected need, and I think there's some doubt and risk that all projects have. But this one is kind of unique to us. I just wish we would have been able to have a workshop, and it was scheduled, but it was snowed out. Because many discussions that we've had as a council, and over a year, I don't know how many executive sessions we had, but it was like, not everybody was sold on the project to begin with. And even at the end, some of us said, when you look at the numbers and you look at the impact that it will have to our community and to that neighborhood, one person who lives close to the project said, if not Saxon, who will do this project? So that was a question that always was in the back of my head. It's also, the site was a lumberyard, and it's falling into ruin as well. And it was a lumberyard because that's where the logs came down the river, That's where they ended and they got, so there was a really good purpose at one time for it to be a lumberyard, but no longer. It's not like we're losing, you know, something very valuable, because it hasn't been for probably over a decade. But, you know, the financial impact, I think, is the biggest one. And I know in discussions, the word risk was thrown out a lot, even from our side. I'm anxious to hear from people tonight, because of the fact that we hadn't had that opportunity to get a lot of public input that we would have at the workshop. It seems rushed. The other question that was posed to me is why not have the new council that's coming on, that you saw a few lame ducks, and I take that name proudly because it's true, you know, and I remember referring to a councilor as a lame duck, and he took offense to it. But, you know, we're not serving any longer, but I think this project, one way or the other, as it goes forward or doesn't go forward, I mean, I think Lewiston has failed to take some risks. And I don't think we benefited from people not having the courage of their convictions or forward-looking thinking. And the discussions here, they went over political boundaries and lines and sentiment, and we found some common ground, and that common ground seemed to have the same thing. Lewiston, in order to thrive and become the city I think it will be, needs to take some risks. And if we don't, then we're going to lose opportunities. So I don't want to lose an opportunity. But I also don't want to take too much risk at the same time. So how do we couch that? And I think there was some confusion and misinformation about the infrastructure improvements, too. And I'd like you to maybe discuss that a little further about off-site improvements that might be necessary to complete the project. And we had some discussions about it, so I'd ask you. But, and again, I really want to hear from the public tonight, and I see people here that are anxious to testify. And I think they've made some great points, and you responded to some of those in writing today, and I appreciate that as well. Again, it's sometimes as the council, we're elected officials, and we got to take tough decisions. And and this is one that these 7 people, if this goes forward, is going to be on our resume. People will know it. I would have loved to seeing a project that would bring more people who would be part of our community on a long-term basis. But it's a tremendous site. It's beautiful. I think will help redevelop an area that needs an infusion of resources. And people think about the downtown, but they very rarely think about this area being downtown. And it's close to where I think the train station ought to eventually be redeveloped, so it's walkable. I think it will also, the kind of people that will be attracted to that site will take advantage of alternative forms of transportation. And I think there's a lot of positives. I'd like this to be a green, sustainable project too. I don't know if there's elements of that can, and we really haven't seen a development plan because we're not to that stage yet. It's schematics. And, there's some architecture. We're trying to develop some criteria for construction in and around the downtown areas, but we're only talking the downtown. I'd like for their designers and architects being willing to kind of embrace some of those concepts. And we've talked about some of those during executive session. So anyway, they're not all of our decisions, they're not all cut and dry and easy. Do you know what I mean? I'm really encourage people to speak their minds tonight at the public hearing, so that the council can get and make a decision that is reflective of some of the valid issues that are out there concerning the project. So thank you.
Thank you, and not to take away from the public, just to address the one question Jim had about the public infrastructure. Really, what's shown in blue here, the Holland Street and Avon Street improvements came directly from Saxon saying we'd like this to be walkable, bikeable. That's our connection to the hospital and the downtown. Can you make those improvements? And then next increment in revenues. However, this project, as Jim alluded to, has not yet been through the development review process. The planning board has not yet taken action on this. As part of the planning board process, there will be a traffic study that needs to be done. And the traffic study will look at this entire neighborhood and impacts of the new bike ped as well as automobile traffic that's going to be going through there. And they may find that other off-site improvements are needed. You might need a stoplight along Main Street. There might be widening of Avon Street. There's various, I don't know what they might be, but the traffic study might indicate there are off-site improvements that are needed. Those will be on the dime of the developer. Those are not on the city's dime. That's part of the development review process. That's simply what development review, it's part of the process. So to flesh that out, that study's not yet been done, but it will be coming.
Thank you. One final point that people wanted to make is that we went through the rezoning process pretty quickly, and the density increase. I don't think people have a problem with density in this area, especially the riverfront area and whatever. So, I mean, obviously, people will be concerned about what the building looks like, and I'm just confident that we, through the development review process, that stuff will be fleshed out, and I encourage people to participate if this were to go forward in that process, because I think that's where some of the details will be worked out. But no, I hear, no problems with the project itself necessarily, and the density is something that we can live with. The financial thing is still, I think, a question in a lot of people's minds. And also, is there a rush to judgment that maybe the next council should take a look at this? Like I said, it's going to be on someone's, again, when we take that leap of faith, be it this council or the next council, this is something that, we'll take responsibility for. And I'm confident that this council or the next council will do that. And again, it's when I was the planning director here in Lewiston, people would often come and ask me if they should buy this property or buy this property or do this or whatever. And I said, a lot of people have come to me and said, boy, I'm sorry I didn't buy that property, but very few people come and say, I'm sorry I did buy the property at that time. And it was kind of a lesson to me to say sometimes, it seems like a lot of money or whatever, but it's a risk worth taking. It, protects your investment, or it allows you to do a development or this or that. So I just encourage people to have an open mind. So thank you.
Councilor Marcotte.
Okay, when Councilor Lyson referred to public infrastructure, could you address some of the other benefits that we would get that isn't necessarily part of the TIF program, but and may have been properly discussed if we didn't go so fast on the previous agenda item? Things such as another line from Lake Auburn.
Oh, yes, yeah, no, thank you for reminding me.
Easements, because I think there are two easements, and the other one
Yes.
has to do with a walkway.
I thank you for giving me that opportunity. After I'd finished, I sort of went, wish I'd mentioned that. So, on the north end of this site, let's see if I can get my finger, yeah, here we go. Up in this area, the city, it's not showing on mine, but on the north end of the parcel, sort of in line with Holland, the Great Falls comes in right down by Veterans Park. If for some reason that ever failed, the city would be without water. So we've been seeking a secondary water line. To do this project, Public Works was with me at that very first meeting saying, look, is there any way we can get an easement that would allow us to make this extension of the water main feed? Saxon has agreed to provide that to the city at no cost. The pipe would then come down Avon Street, and we can't use TIF revenues to pay for the extension of the water main because it's an enterprise fund. It's not part of, it's paid by users of the water system, not taxpayers, although they often are also taxpayers, but we need to separate the revenues. So that's one of the easements. And then the other, upriver of this, coming off of Sunnyside Park, there's a wonderful greenway, the lot between the project and the river that could be used for extending that greenway trail. We would need to get access along the easements from property owners above the Saxon project and below it, before that would be able to be triggered. But once we had site control that would allow the extension of the easement, they would be willing to do that as well. Those improvements would be at the city's cost, but the easements would not be.
That would fully connect with the second half of the city of Lewiston, down from, let's say, Longley Bridge to Lisbon?
As far as the
Would
Riverfront
it-
Trail?
would the river trail make a full connection there?
There are plans on Lincoln Street, so we're really starting the little Cannon neighborhood, and, yeah, I mean, it's not really tied to this project. The long-term vision, we would need to get from there to, right now, I think it hits the street grid, kind of tucked in behind the hospital, it wiggles its way down. We would get down by Veterans Park, we would then need to get underneath the bridge and then connect in by Smart Pay.
But there would be no further needs to ask for easements from Saxon.
No, Saxon. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Does Dave have the, yeah, I saw it tell me I was dying, but I didn't know where the plug was. Is Dave back there or no?
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
I just don't know what the plug is.
So, I'm sorry, have we addressed,
Okay,
these are gonna be equally split between studio and one-bedroom units. They're gonna be very high-quality units. They're very much targeted to the market. They're looking to serve people who are making between $40,000 and $80,000 a year in the offerings we have. So it's really trying to attract new residents to the area. I know they may end up staying around.
So I'm going to open the public hearing while you're getting
I'm up.
rebooted in case you need to. So if anyone has, please step to the, either the podium, or you can come to this table and just state your name and address.
Shouldn't be making this decision. But now I understand that extensive discussions and terms were agreed to in executive session over a period of months, and that you know the details intimately, and therefore do not feel it appropriate to pass it to the next council. The planning board has only approved a conceptual design, but we're looking at giving 63% back to the developer. These apartments are admittedly not being built for our community. With no affordable housing units, no family units. The proposal was accepted because the project, although not for us, was supposed to be for our benefit, in the form of capital improvements to my neighborhood and tax revenue for other. The return to the developer will be $7 million. There is under $400,000 being set aside for maintenance work that should have been completed in my neighborhood years ago. There are no money set aside or an explanation given as to why capital improvements my neighbors feel we need now aren't being addressed before 400 more cars are on our roads multiple times a day. There's no money set aside for basic maintenance, for bike lanes, for these younger, wealthier folk we're hoping to attract, or for upgrading our community space, which is Sunnyside Park. My neighbors and I know these things are needed, including streetlights, because we live there. The city doesn't know these things are needed because they haven't done the due diligence to put in the traffic study. You may hear from folks tonight that don't believe an out-of-state for-profit corporation with no ties to our community and no experience managing a similar structure should be receiving this TIF, especially in light of the fact that there are no guarantees this project will even create local employment opportunities in its planning or construction. That's not my argument. I'm all for this project if it's done correctly, and I believe there will be a net benefit for the community. I simply don't agree with giving away tax revenue without making sure the actual cost of the density increase in my neighborhood are addressed, and the funding isn't coming at the expense of the underserved in our community, or a promise similar to the one made on this project of additional tax revenue. I ask council to delay the vote until feedback is received from the impacted neighborhood, a proper traffic speed. We've been waiting since the 60s to get our sidewalks back from the last compromise we were asked to make for progress. A few months from the city would my neighbors to not vote on this TIF today. But that's what I have to say. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
So can I just ask you to share the sign thing with the city clerk who can share it with us?
Great, thanks, Josh.
And some thought aside, like an afterthought, like, oh, we'll just give you this, it'll help you connect and make, it adds into like the picture that you're trying to build, but you're not saving any money. How are you going to take advantage of all of our efforts in bringing in public transportation to the city and giving it to newcomers? There's a reason that people in Lewiston do not like newcomers, and it's because we get exploited. Please, please, please vote to allow the next council to vote on this and to decide for us. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joseph Gruby. I live at 74 Brooks Avenue, which is in Ward 1. As a matter of fact, I've lived in Ward 1 for 45 years. I've lived on Cottage Street, and I've lived on Main Street, and I've lived on Brooks Avenue. I've lived there as a tenant, as a property owner, and as now a landlord. One thing that I should mention is that I do feel that a TIF can be a very important economic tool. However, there are good TIFs and there are bad TIFs. This is a bad TIF. I would urge the council not to approve the TIF. Every year, April 1st rolls around. That's the year the city tax assessor determines the total taxable valuation of the city of Lewiston. The city of Lewiston has very limited opportunities to bring in new revenue. Number one, you don't pass laws that affect property taxation. All of that is done by the legislature. All the city can do is operate within a framework of what the state of Maine provides under Title 36. In many cases, we've done TIFs in the past that have made sense. This one doesn't make sense. Number one, you have 245 one-bedroom units that you would be giving a TIF to, that the money will be tied up for the next 20 years. So that every April 1st, oh, it's also April Fool's Day if you haven't thought of that, every April 1st, we will be looking at, well, we've already made this decision, and it's now for the next council, you know, your hands are tied. So in this case, use your discretion and turn down the current proposal. It's not a good deal for Lewiston taxpayers in Ward 1 or throughout all 7 wards. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment on this item? All right, I will close the public hearing. Any further discussion on the council? Councilor Wright.
I just wanted to check with the city clerk, and on that petition, is that a petition administered by your office or
No,
unofficial
we did not
citizens?
issue it
Okay,
yet.
thank you.
Any further discussion on the council? Councilor Lacey.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues is, you know, I think, you know, we've been through this discussion for a long time. So, and I think even Josh made, you know, the leap of faith to say maybe this council should make this decision. So, I mean, that's the first thing that I really was dealing with. And as I said, you know, I think back to those executive sessions where there were some tough discussions occurring, and again, this is by no means the perfect project or the best, you know, again, I just feel that I wish the public could have experienced some of the discussions we had about why the 63% TIF was, you know, important. $7 million seems like a lot of money to give back to a for-profit company. And again, interesting enough, it's also, the vote's going to start from this chair right here. So that's going to be a tough one. Because, you know, that'll set the kind of a framework. And, you know, there's lots of people that I really, really value their input who have a different opinion on this than the development team and obviously the administration and some counselors. And, you know, that's always a difficult one. And you know, I think like I said, I wish we could have more of the presentations that we heard in executive session for the public to hear. And I know that's difficult, especially by missing the workshop that we're going to have. I think some of that stuff would have come out, perhaps. And I thank you, Link, for responding and writing today, too, to some of the questions. And it certainly helped me get a better handle on the project, too. And even though we've discussed it a lot, and, you know, the planning board's discussed it a lot, too. But, again, their criteria is a lot less than ours is. I mean, we have the ability to assist in a project. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't want to repeat myself, these are tough calls, and I don't know if any from the Saxon partners would like to just explore a little bit on what drove, you know, the investment community to take a look at this and say, you know, why do we need a 63%? That would be great.
I'm Tom Greco. I think we've spoken before. Sorry, your question was?
Yeah, just what the investment, you know, you were attempting to, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, sure. So why do we choose 63%?
You know, why is 63, why is that a magic number for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, this has been a long process for discussion, or conversation that we've been going through. I started looking for capital about 9 months ago, and reached out to several different equity sources, and you know, I think Link touched on this very well in his description. We chose 63% in order to hit the minimum thresholds that we were getting back from the equity. So they were saying, hey, look, this is what we're looking for in this type of marketplace. And so rather than try to ask for more than what we needed, we were trying to hit those thresholds so that we knew that we could find equity to support this and capital to support this.
Could you characterize our marketplace a little bit, too, here at the Lewiston Marketplace?
Absolutely. So Lewiston is an incredible city. We believe in the city. It's, as you said, it's the second largest city in Maine. But, you know, when institutional money looks at deals, and anyone looks at deals, they look at it from a risk-reward perspective. And Lewiston in the capital markets is an unproven market, especially on the institutional side. And so when that's the case, to them it feels very risky. We don't see as much risk in coming to Lewiston as what we thought we were going to see, right? So the feedback was that it's just risky. It's a tertiary market. It's unproven, and so with that risk, they are asking for larger or stronger returns for their money. And anyone would, right? If you're taking on a risky investment, people are going to say, well, is it worth it? Should I just put it into something else and get the same return for less risk? And of course, the answer is yes. So.
And if you can kind of project into the future, you know, obviously it's your option to do this or not, but let's say this is a successful project.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have every, you know, confidence that's a possibility. How does that change the marketplace then for future investment? I guess?
So I think you look at the cities, Biddeford's a good example where there's started to get some institutional investment into those marketplaces, and it's evolved, it's grown, and people are comfortable investing in that city, and it's grown incredibly over the last 10 years. That's the same concept here. I think it takes that impetus of change and comfort level to go from an unproven market to, you know what, this does work, and I do feel comfortable investing in these cities, and that's what we're
How about the
hoping happens.
nature of the project? I know you have proposals in other areas, but you don't really have an example of it on, on the ground, or
Correct, yeah.
is there other projects like this by other development companies
That are specifically focused on medical housing?
Well, yeah, that market. Yeah.
Not too many, not too many. But there are examples of it across the country where we do see that, and there's a need for it specifically near hospitals. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah. The other thing is the question about bringing in people from away. I guess we've always thought that might be a part of our redevelopment strategy,
Yeah,
is to bring
yeah.
people into the
Well,
community.
retaining people, like I think you touched on this, was retaining people that come, and they may be there for a short period of time, but may say, you know what, I like this area, I get this area, this makes sense to me. And we hope part of look, we want to retain residents as well. That's part of how this works. That's part of how we're successful. And so we want to provide a nice product, and we want to have access to the downtown. We want to allow people to walk. That's what people want now. They don't want to drive everywhere. So, again, I apologize. I'm
Yeah,
not sure that I answered your
no,
question,
thank you
but
thank
we're
you for
very
going along
excited
with me on
about
the
the
question.
location and
Yeah.
what it could become. So.
Thank you.
Are you're all set? So, I don't have any questions for you. Does anyone else have questions for Saxon? No. So I think I have a question for you, Ed. When we talk about like a traffic study and when that happens in this process, I mean, that's the process that we have in place, that the way that we're going about this now is no different than any process we've done for any other project. This is,
That's correct. Many developers, when they're trying to put a project together, they need to know that they have some of the basic approvals in place before they can go to the next step, which involves actually designing the project, doing the site plan, doing the traffic study, and all of those kinds of things. That's pretty much a routine way that a developer is going to approach it. If you don't have the zoning, there's no sense proceeding. In this case, if you don't have the financing, there's no sense in proceeding. So they want to get those things all lined up before they go to that next step, which tends to be fairly expensive, both in terms of site planning, design, project design, and traffic studies and other work that has to be done.
great. And then, I feel like there's been mention of there being some kind of rush to judgment here, and I really want to be really like crystal clear that this council has been negotiating with this developer for nearly a year now, and that it is 100% appropriate for this council to vote on this project at this time. I feel really strongly about that, because I think that we've spent a lot of time going back and forth with the developer on this, and starting over from the beginning with a new council just does not make a whole lot of sense to me. So, if there's no further discussion, I think we're good. Councilor Marquardt?
Just a procedural question. So we're still in the public hearings section.
No, I closed it.
We closed it?
Yep.
So we need to have another motion on approving the order? I'd move that question.
Okay. Do I have a second?
And
Second.
okay. And if I could
Sure.
speak. I agree with everything, Jim, that's surprising. When Councilor Lyson.
It only took how many years to
Well,
Building bridges at this last meeting.
yeah, it seems like it's been 2 years on this. Maybe there are other facets of this other than just the negotiation on the TIF that predated a year ago. But through the process, I'm not usually a fan, as everyone knows, of TIFs. And the deeper the TIF, the more agitated I can get. But I had asked a question of the administrator a few months ago, and fortunately, he remembered the nature of it and put some numbers together for us today. And I look at this project, and I look at the sorely needed tax revenue the city needs, and it translates, if I get the numbers right off the charts, $208,000 is what we would receive, net of TIFs, et cetera, et cetera.
Without the, yeah, it would be 208,000 with the city share for the first 10 years. We've got that.
And then it would increase.
Yeah, so it would, in the general fund net in year 1 would be 152,000.
Oh, okay.
By year 11, we'd be at 208,000, and it increases each year.
Okay, so
And
the
so
208 less the 56,000?
56,000, and that shrinks each year.
Which is what, the 56,000?
Is for the
It's
debt
for the-
service associated with.
Debt service with the infrastructure, okay.
Right.
The numbers that the administrator shared today was a comparison to what we realize as tax revenue from current 3-unit tenements versus how much we would receive from each tenement in this 245-unit project, and translated to just about the same amount of money, which on first look, I kind of start to hedge. But then when I start thinking about the impact on municipal services, it's not going to be as impactful. We're not looking at occupants that are going to have a lot of children or any to impact on our schools. So there's a net benefit there. And like Councilor Lyson said earlier, missed opportunities, and I've lived in this community long enough, 57 years, to know that we've missed a lot of opportunities, like those people who come back and say, I wished I had bought that property, or maybe I wished I had located my business here. We've missed too many opportunities. I don't want to miss one here. And an influx of a new labor pool, although they may initially come here for a residency, they may stay here, take other jobs. They increase our labor pool to such where other industries and other businesses may want to locate here for the first time in a long time. So I see this as a net benefit. The residents will obviously generate economic activity in the community. When they're not on the job, they'll be out there patronizing retail, eateries, nightlife. Maybe we can start to revitalize the area both behind the hospital and along Lincoln Street. We've been looking at a few buildings that have been purchased for prospecting opportunity that hasn't come yet. This could be one of the driving engines for that to happen. So that's why, though, yes, the TIF is 63%, I wish it was lower, as I've said along the way, but I think we can still manage this, and hopefully the next project will be no TIF.
It's always the hope.
Just want to
Councilor Lyson.
final comment. I mean, this council is making a leap of faith to a certain extent by approving this project. And I know that it's a long way from this point to when the project gets finished. But I do think that, I challenge the team, the development team, including the city, to do all we can to make this project the best if it goes forward. So, I mean, that's, to me, that's the legacy that I'd be willing to live and say, hey, we took our best shot. I wish people were as privileged as we were to kind of hear a lot of the other stuff that went on during the negotiation process, but that's why we're elected officials. That's our duty to do it. And, I looked at the petition of the 20 signatures, and I have 6 of my favorite constituents on that list, saying, hey, kick it to the next council. I just don't think that's going to accomplish much if we do that. Again, it will just slow this process down, and we may lose the opportunity just because of that aspect. It's still going to take some time to get this thing built into the ground. But I know a lot of people, I mean, I got a lot of calls with people who say, that, the TIF is just too much and there's too much risk. But other people who said, I remember the consultant we had for the downtown master plan said, if you have a plan that will not attract investment, then what good is it? You've got to have a city that can attract, and you've got to create plans that can help people have confidence in investing in our community. And, one of my biggest constituent opponents, I'm going to have to go home and face later, because, her dream of this area was a much different dream than this project. And, but again, I think we have a responsibility to this community to kind of do what we think is right in the best interest of the entire community. It's in Ward 1, obviously, and it was brought out that it's going to impact the rest of the wards too. And I totally agree with that statement. But I think this is one where, hopefully it will be able to, be a shining light and also an attractor of future investment into this area and creating a marketplace that wasn't there before. And certainly there's no detractors of the project who are trying to do the same type project, that's for sure, because it's just not happening. And I think we do need, I've always said affordable housing is not just for low-income people. It's for all ranges of incomes. And we have to have those types and mixes. And, I don't think I'll make my decision until my vote, but I'm the first guy voting, so it's going to happen pretty damn quickly. So anyway, I'll stop it there. Thank you.
Further discussion on the council? All right, I have a motion.
Yep, Jolene.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jolene.
I'll make it quick. I'm just going to give Jim some time to think. I do want to say that when we come to this council, as counselors, we don't know everything about everything. And I'm a teacher, so when education issues come up, and I'm not on the school board, but I feel comfortable. But when issues of real estate and financing come up, I look to the people on the council who know a lot about it. And I'm glad they spoke, because I really, really, really trust them. And I'm hoping their constituents will trust them too with their vote, because I know they're voting with their heart and their heads. I know they know a lot about this financing business, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Further discussion on the council? All right, I have a motion by Councilor Marcotte, seconded by Councilor Pettengill.
And just for the sake of clarification, is it okay if I read the
Sure, that'd be
motion just
great.
so we're all set? The motion is to approve the order approving the establishment of the Saxon Partners Residence at Great Falls Tax Increment Financing District and Program, and approval of a designation of a tax increment financing district and credit enhancement agreement.
Motion by Councilor Marcotte, seconded by Councilor Pettengill.
Yes, thank you.
Call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes,
Ward 7?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 4.
Item number 4, order approving the establishment of the 143 Blake Street Sophia's House Tax Increment Financing District and Program, and the agreement for development assistance, establishment of a TIF district, and tax increment financing between the City of Lewiston and the 143 Blake Street LLC. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to open and hold a public hearing on the proposed Sophia's House Tax Increment Financing and Program.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. Any discussion on the council before we, or,
I will be recusing myself from this vote, so I'm also going to step down for the public
okay,
hearing.
great, thank you. Why don't we do a presentation by these 2 lovely humans first, and then we can move to the public hearing.
Wonderful.
Questions and then the public hearing.
This particular project will benefit from the explanation on how TIFs work. This one's a much simpler one, a much smaller one. Clara Tammany is the executive director, I believe, of the Center for Wisdom's Women, who is a small nonprofit who saw a need and stepped up to the plate in a very big way, raised $1.6 million to develop an 11-unit housing project that 5 of the units, I believe, will be for women who will serve as mentors. They'll have apartments there, then there'll be 6 single-room occupancies on the top floor. There was a wonderful ribbon cutting early, I guess it was on Friday?
Yes.
Yes. And they're ready to start welcoming guests into the project. As they were looking at it, they raised $1.6 million, but they are a small nonprofit. Every dollar they need to spend, they need to raise. And so they had asked the city for TIF support to help reduce their cost of operations. Again, following the same template. You can't even really see it on this big map, but this is a very small parcel right on the other side of Kennedy Park, tucked away behind the Wallace School. Boy, I just cannot win with this. This shows Kennedy Park is the bottom part, and then this is Walnut Street with the Agora Grand off to the right side of Walnut Street. Sophia's house is tucked in. It's just 0.31 acres in size. Oh, gosh. Sorry. Here's the way the revenues flow. This is just a 5-year TIF. Because this property was built, I believe in 1914 is when it was completed. It has not been taxable since then. It was owned by Sisters of Charity. So there's, the TIF statute is structured where it has to be the taxable value on the property. So the taxable value was 0. Bill Healy took a look at the revenues that this will generate and thinks that even though $1.6 million was invested in it, the actual assessed valuation is going to be about $180,000, and that will be generating about $5,200 a year in taxes. The way the TIF is structured is for the first 2 years, while Sophia's house is really just getting up and running, 100% of the taxes paid will be reimbursed to the project. In year 3, 90% of the taxes, then 80, and then 75% in year 5. At that point, I'm looking at the 2 revenue streams. The TIF revenue going back to the developer is $23,000, $158 over the 5-year TIF. The city will simply see $2,800.62 over the course of the 5-year TIF. But what's really important to note here is that Sophia's House and Center for Women's Wisdom recognizes that cities have costs of operations as well, and they're willing to pay a portion of those shares. Even as a small nonprofit, they would be not required to do it. The only reason they have to pay taxes now is because historic tax credits were used for part of the financing. And to take advantage of tax credits, you have to be a taxable entity. After the 5 years, it's going to be a nonprofit again, but they have agreed to pay a 25% pilot going forward. Right. In perpetuity, and every 5 years we'll revisit it. There's a associated cottage industry that's called Urban Works, and if they become wildly successful, which we hope you do.
You mean when?
Excuse me?
You mean when they become?
When they become wildly successful, they'd be willing to perhaps share more of those revenues with the city. So here's how the TIF revenues flow. Again, it's just for a 5-year period. And then the tax shifts is the next slide. Boy, this thing just does not want to go forward. There we go. Tax shifts, I explained the way these work. These are simply the amount of revenue that we would pay more in county taxes and we would receive less from the state. So over the course of the 5-year TIF, there's about $8,900 that if we did not TIF this, we would either pay or receive less. With that, that was all I had for slides. Clara, would you like to?
Well, one other
thing that we worked out was that over the course of about 20 years, with our proposal, the city does get more in taxes than if we just paid taxes for 5 years and never again. So in the long run, it's a win-win for both, giving us a more solid base at the beginning and continuing to support the city.
Councilor Lyson.
Yeah, unlike the prior project, this one's a no-brainer. I mean, this is what I'm just, if this project wasn't going forward, we'd have to figure out ways of doing it ourselves as a city. And plus, you're creating also labor opportunities as well, and earning opportunities, and dealing with some of the most difficult transitions of all, women back into, life, from everything from trafficking, and substance use disorders and whatever. And I just applaud you, and the opening was, the ribbon cutting was just so inspiring. And, I felt proud to be a person that had a small role in it, but also just felt the energy of so many people that were there who understand how important this project is. So I just encourage the councilors to, support a project that is really, and I was involved with St. Mary's for a long time, and I know actually the Wallace School is now the nutrition center. I wanted to, and this was a project I always said, why aren't we developing that? And we said, we just can't figure out how we could afford it. And it was difficult, even for a large corporation like St. Mary's, to really even do something with a project that was, a building that was right next to them. And, not too many years from now, I don't think that building could have been saved, would have been saved. And to see it in its splendor and grandeur, like I did on Friday, it was just remarkable. And I know how much effort so many people had to do with that. And as you said, also, that, you need the support going on, this project. So I think that, hopefully your enterprises will work and thrive. But again, I think that the community itself still needs to, say, hey, this is a citywide project. This is our project, and it's downtown. But it's who we are and what kind of things we want to support. So I just applaud you and thank you for all your efforts.
Thanks, Jim.
Further discussion on the council before we open the public hearing? Okay. So I'll open the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak to this item?
Hi, Heather Everly. I was on the steering committee for the Sophia House, and it's actually what really got me involved really deeply in Lewiston politics. So I really want to say that I appreciate you for that, Clara. Clara and I had a really deep conversation, and she learned about my dream to have a mission of my own one day. I had a 10-year, at that time, goal. Anyways, my mom has lived with addiction for her whole life. She's had 4 children, and she's had all 4 children taken away. I'm the only one that talks to her still. This project has been so meaningful to me because I realize just how deep the ripples go when it comes to addiction, when it comes to trafficking, when it comes to going to jail, when it comes to all these different reasons that a woman could be in trauma. The fact that it only holds 6 people is really disappointing to me, but it's a really good start. I would really appreciate it if you did go forward with this, because it's going to help a lot of people. And I think that it's going to be a great model in moving forward for the rest of the state in dealing with a very complex issue. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Any further comment from the council? So I just want to say I had the great honor of speaking at the ribbon cutting on Friday. And, I'm looking at what I said, and there's a million wonderful things I could say about Clara to everyone that's here. But I think I want to focus on the fact that I'm really, really proud of the role that the city of Lewiston is able to play in the redevelopment of this building and the building of Sophia's house, both through community development block grant funding and also through possible TIF financing. I believe deeply in the mission of Sophia's house, and I think that I am especially excited to witness the many life-changing experiences that will no doubt result from its founding. So thank you so much to Clara and to everybody else who was a part of this project. And I think if we have no further discussion.
Kristen, could I just ask
Sure,
one thing?
yeah, sure.
We're moving in Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, and if any people with muscles want to come and help carry things to the third floor, that would be great.
All right, so the call has been made. And I'm sure whatever efforts anyone puts in will be paid back in spades by the universe. So if we are all through with discussion, I think we can move to the vote. So I have a motion, correct? Or was that just in the public hearing?
I think it's just for the public
Okay.
hearing, so a motion for the actual motion, which is to approve the order approving the establishment of the 143 Blake Street Sophia's House Tax Increment Financing District and the program and the agreement for development assistance, establishment of a TIF district, and tax increment financing.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. Call the roll.
All set? Counselor from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Agenda item number 5.
Item number 5, resolve adopting the 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan for the city's community development block grant program. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to hold a public hearing to receive comments on the draft CDBG 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor LaJoy, seconded by Councilor Pettengill. Do you want to just give us a quick and dirty overview?
Yeah, I can. I've got a very quick PowerPoint that's
Okay.
built off of the,
We've got lots of PowerPoints tonight.
I do have lots of PowerPoints tonight. I don't know what to do without them.
And we promise the council will give Link a training class on how to.
Plug into his
Promise
computer.
me.
Yeah,
The
this,
Luddites that we are, Link.
this does have a mind of its own. I want you all to know that. We had a workshop about a week ago, and really to cut down to the chase without giving you all the demographic information associated with that. We've got 4 goals, one of which is to service public service agencies, which is to help them provide essential services to improve quality of life for residents of the area that have low to moderate incomes, as well as special needs populations and homeless populations. There's some other rules associated with that, with funding caps. We are looking to reduce the number of agencies funded to no more than 10, making sure that there's a minimum level of funding of $5,000, and really focusing on fair housing, improving education, and continuing to provide security and utility deposit assistance to folks who are suffering or at risk of being homeless. Second goal was housing, which is to maintain and improve the supply of safe and affordable housing for individuals and families in that low to moderate income as well. Under the choice neighborhood planning effort, one of the more memorable slogans that's coming out of that is lead free by 43, and we've got a lot of work to get there, but CDB dollars can help get us there. We're looking to use CDBG to match lead grant funds. We'll be helping homeowners and investors improve their buildings, acquire their buildings. We'll continue to be funding code enforcement. We'll be helping with historic rehabilitation of downtown properties. And really a big goal is to increase the number of homeowners in the targeted area, the downtown 201 through 204. Economic development is really to create economic opportunities to help people escape low, moderate income, help them improve their station in life. We've got loan and grant programs targeted to entrepreneurs, as well as people creating jobs for low to moderate income people. We want to help with workforce training, education. We want to expand the accessibility of daycare, help people start daycare businesses. We've got the Brownfield grant, which is a $500,000 grant, which will be helping with Bates Mill number 5's either redevelopment or demolition. CDBG dollars will be used for the match to help us get us there. And it's really let's reduce blight and rehabilitate these historic buildings downtown. And then the last goal is public infrastructure, which is really targeting our dollars in these downtown neighborhoods, such as tracks 203 to 204. We can both use it for streets and sidewalks and water and sewer improvements. We can also use these dollars to help public service agencies that are building facilities, like the YWCA, like Tree Street Youth, like Sophia's House. That's a good use of CDBG dollars. Those were the goals that were put forth last time. Just as far as recommendations coming out from the Citizen Advisory Committee, which Jolene served on that committee, and we were glad to continue to help us get this consolidated plan together.
It was a pleasure.
But, thank you. The regulatory burden continues to increase, so we do need to keep these dollars flowing, but part of the reason for making those agencies, fewer agencies and giving them more dollars is they have to hit the same standards the city does. And I'm fortunate to have very good staff who knows those rules much better than I ever will. And Jane happens to be here tonight, so we're glad for that. But she really helps keep us in line, and that'll be continuing. Noting in the last consolidated plan, we did fund a general assistance position for all 5 years. That's no longer an eligible use of the dollars simply because our actual demand on those services has reduced, and the city's also increased its staffing to that, and you're not allowed to supplant local dollars with federal dollars. Code enforcement's the other way around, though. We're still focusing efforts. We have one code enforcement person specifically targeted to those downtown census tracts, hoping to improve the situation there. And we expect to be funding them for a couple more years at least. Actually, we've covered these. We're going to be doing the scoring. One thing I need to do and hand out is part of this is we also have had this open for public comment, and we'll be through, I believe it's December 21st, but we have received some comments. Let me hand these out.
Okay, great, thank you. That was in the back, so, thanks.
So these comments will be included in the consolidated plan as well as our reaction to it. The first was that a comment received was to incorporate a strategy to enable residents to access information about cleaning and resources to help them clean out. Checklist for residents and information about how to rid households of bed bugs and roaches, and funding to help landlords treat. As far as being able to fund providing money for dealing with pests, that's not actually an eligible use under the national objectives. So while we can provide some training about it, we can't give them money to actually bring a pest control person in there. So it'll be commented, it'll be included, but we can't do that. Someone else had said we should encourage more owner-occupied housing in the 3 to 5 unit properties in the downtown. And we are allowed to do that with the 1 to 4 unit. We can actually provide homebuyer assistance, helping them save monies for their down payment. But once you get beyond that 4 unit property, we no longer can do it, although we will have dollars available to help them with rehab of their properties. The third issue was brought by Councilor Lewiston at the workshop, which was to provide some support needed at some time for the city to create a public shelter. And if there's a grassroots concerted effort, can this type of strategy be included in the draft plan? And it is articulated in the plan to a certain degree already. It would not be wholly publicly funded, but any private entity that wanted to come certainly could apply for dollars, and there's certainly an eligible use. And then the last comment, there was another comment that most residents of the downtown can be trusted to do the right thing and are responsible citizens. And that will be included in the consolidated plan, and we acknowledge that comment and have accepted it. There's really nothing you can do on a statement basis.
Can you let Link finish, or
Just one more, if I could, and then the other second sheet I handed out was from Craig Phillips, who has run the Tedford Shelter. It's a project here in Lewiston that's really been a housing first model, where they've got, I believe it's 12 units there, that homeless families have come. They can stay there, and they have stayed there until they're more stable. They get counseling services. The comment from Craig is he thought the consolidated plan was sound and rational, and he expressed his appreciation for the support he's received from CDBG over the years. With that, I'm done.
great, Councilor Lyson?
Sorry. With respect to the recommended action relative to my comment, I think there was a little bit of confusion. I mean, a public shelter is open and barrier-free. I'd like the words barrier-free
Okay?
on there, and available to homeless persons regardless of religion. It is typically run, it could be run by a nonprofit, but it also could be also funded by the municipality too, like they do in Portland. And I just want to add that as well. And I think that I've just experienced a number of people saying we need to create a barrier-free public shelter. And public means run by the public, but in some situations a nonprofit could take the running of it. But I think the municipality needs to have a stake in it. And I know that it's controversial and costly, but I do think that, the language just says let's explore that possibility of doing that. And I just looked back at tonight's agenda about, the first one was even Yvette's Cucina. I've learned about that a lot lately and planned to sample Puerto Rican ethnic food for the first time. So, and then 2 tips, one for Saxon, which was kind of controversial, but I think a big step for the city, one for Sophia House. Now, the consolidated plan, and then we're talking about Charlie, you would sign on the Bates Mill. I mean, what a way for me to end my council stuff. It's just great. But I think here is one thing I wanted to make a statement, because so many people have talked to me about this issue. And, homelessness is prevalent in this community. It's often not talked about or acknowledged. And I think its place, we talk about it in your policies about dealing with homelessness. And I do think that we need now to, at least explore that next step to say, what kind of skin in the game should the city have to deal with a real vital and important issue. So if, that language could be massaged a little bit to, it could be a nonprofit, but it also could be the city as well.
And I hear and understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I mean, the city receives between $700,000 and $800,000 a year in CDBG dollars. In talking with Ed, where I think Bangor did have a public shelter, and I think you said it was well over $1 million a year annually to run.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and check, but it's a nonprofit shelter it's fairly significant cost to running it. The city assistance up there is through general assistance.
So,
we could talk about the funding. I've been here long enough to say we're not going to solve the money issue right away, but let's at least, get some minds together who are dedicated to this issue, and then figure it out. Because you also mentioned the continuum of care supports these shelters as well, and private sources of money and donations and stuff can go a long way to. I just am confronted on a daily basis, literally, about people just saying, what are we doing with our homeless people? And I do think if it's the last act that I take, just before the Charlie Hewitt thing on the Bates Mill, it's time well spent. And I feel good about accomplishing at least elevating that issue up, and I think it's appropriate to be in the consolidated plan. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the council? Right, so now we're going to open it for public hearing, correct?
Heather Everly, Blake Street. And we're talking about my neighborhood. And there hasn't been a lot of bottom-up processing, which it sounds like Jim's trying to say is getting a lot of input from the folks that live in the neighborhood and getting what they want and what they need, instead of designing, as the language in this paper says. It's a neighborhood transformation plan, but who's transforming it? We've got a bunch of white people deciding for the most diverse part of Lewiston, and part of this area has not had a city councilor representing them for about 9 months now. We are very vulnerable. Last week, during the planning meeting, I was very hurt when Abdi was tokenized as the only Muslim on the board. And I think that was very unfair, and I feel like he deserves an apology, and I think that the people in our community can do better, and I believe that we will do better. I feel like I'm always coming up here and dissenting and being pretty upset, but I'm really passionate about my neighbors, and I live amongst them. I see them every day, and I just really want people to start looking at what we really want and what we really need instead of designing it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? All right, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. So now I need a motion and a second for the acceptance of the plan, correct?
Yes, so the motion would be to approve the resolve adopting the 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan for the city's community development block grant program.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. Any discussion on the council? Councilor Ray.
Just a procedural question. So we're voting on this consolidated plan tonight, and public comment doesn't close till December 21st. How will that be incorporated into the plan and relate to us?
Any additional comments we receive will be shared with the council, and if there's anything substantive that we really feel we need to come back to you with, we will, but, and we will be sharing with you whatever else comes in, very, in a similar format to what we provided tonight.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Marcotte.
On the same line, the comment that's inputted into the plan, that's advisory, it's not necessarily part of the plan, correct?
Right, and it's comments received are
Comments
included.
that can be reflected on in the future when people refer to the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Further discussion on the council? All right, call the roll.
Counselor from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes,
Ward 7?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 6.
Item number 6, order authorizing the installation of a temporary hopeful sign on the north facade of Bates Mill number 5. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the installation of a temporary hopeful sign on the north facade of Bates Mill number 5.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Lyson, seconded by Councilor Ray. Any discussion on the council? To the public?
Heather Everly again, Blake Street. I've been talking with my neighbors about this, and a lot of us feel like the arrow going up into the left feels sort of like an ode to the past, and that it seems a little racist. And it might be something that us white folks can forget about, how the past has affected other people, but it's a real consideration that we need to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Back to the council. Councilor Marcotte.
Like I said during the workshop last week, I had my own concerns about the sign looking more like an advertisement than art. However, there was something I wanted to say last week that I didn't get to say tongue-in-cheek, and in reaction to what I just heard. I think it looks a little bit like something out of Happy Days, like something you find on top of, what was the diner's name? Arnold's.
Kathy.
And actually, I think that gives a cheery mode. I mean, I don't see this as some sort of negative. I just didn't see it as art, and I will be voting for this.
Any further discussion on the council? Councilor Ray.
Sorry, I just wanted to make mention of the emails that I shared with you all from a number of local artists expressing their opinion on this. As we talked about last week, it sparked conversation for certain.
Further conversation, further discussion. Councilor
Yeah,
Lyson.
I think it's both art and hopeful and humorous and back to the 50s when life was a little less complex, perhaps. So, and I think we need to pull together as a community, and this is, and I don't look at it as advertising, or anything about the Bates Mill necessarily itself, but our community. And as I mentioned last week, as Greta Thunberg said, hope, it means you need to do something. And I think this council and the city is doing things, and that's what will make people hopeful. And I think the sign is very symbolic of that. And I'm not going to argue with an artist about the meaning or whatever, or what, So, and I have a lot of respect for Charlie Hewitt as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
And just very quickly, Tom Platts gave me a package yesterday, so we've got I didn't
Looks like a check.
process, I've got a check for the sign permit, which is what code's gonna require. I've got the certificate of insurance and the agreement between the city and Platts, so all that's executed, giving Ed the authority to do what he needs to do as well, so.
Great, thank you. Councilor Beam.
Just want to make a quick comment. You were talking about the meaning of the sign, and if you ask the artist, you wouldn't want to ask the artist. I have an artist that lived in my house, and he's my son. He's still an artist, and I've asked him a few times about what does it mean, because his art is similar to this, and he never, ever answers me. He says, whatever you think.
It's whatever it means to you, right?
So, yeah. That's all.
Okay. All right, call the roll.
Council from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 7.
Item number 7, order authorizing execution of a municipal quitclaim deed for real estate located at 367 East Avenue. Requested action to approve the order authorizing execution of a municipal quitclaim deed for real estate located at 367 East Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor LaJoy, seconded by Councilor Lyson. Any discussion on the council? To the public? Back to the council? Call the roll.
Council from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Oh, yes. I was so
7?
thinking of the sign.
Yes.
And Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8, reports and updates.
So I believe we have one from Councilor Ray and from Councilor Beam.
Yes,
So I'll-
thank you.
The school committee meets tomorrow night in executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation, our last act as the school committee.
Councilor Beam.
Okay, I'll just be a little bit longer, but not too long. And since this was the last meeting of this council, and this is the council that reinstated the recycle committee, for which I'm really grateful. And some of us are stepping down. I wanted to be sure that everyone was aware of the productive work that the ad hoc recycle and waste management committee has accomplished so far. So let me give you a brief abbreviated overview of what the committee has accomplished. First, the committee members have contacted other towns and interviewed the heads of their waste management departments. They've interviewed many towns, south of us and north of us. The committee members shared their information at the weekly meetings, and we met every single week, every single Wednesday, because they felt we felt as though we really wanted to get something accomplished before June. So I think they've really worked hard. A spreadsheet summarizing their findings will be generated. It has also invited the Public Works Solid Waste Facility Superintendent Rob Stalford, who provided an overview of the SWF and history regarding the city's recycling. And most people were there at the meeting and asked a lot of questions. Some members of the committee were able to attend the AFCOG lunch with contractors of various recycling waste programs, composting, apparel, repurpose, which is really an exciting thing, hazardous waste, universal waste, recycle waste and collection. And they shared their insights that they got there at the meeting, and they were really glad they went, and they learned a lot. The committee is also working with and getting much information on recycling from the Natural Resources Council, a wealth of information that we have to read and process. At this stage, the committee is almost ready to compile a report with some suggestions the members feel would help to increase the city's recycling rate. The committee will most likely need, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to include this. The committee is also looking into some source for grants, because now I'll say we'll most likely need some funding for some of these ideas that we're generating. That's it to date. The committee is very motivated, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from them with a more comprehensive report very soon. I'm really, really sorry that I won't be able to follow through, but I'm glad I got started with this committee, because we'll have to appoint a new counselor to help the committee. And that's it. No rambling.
Thank you. Any further reports and updates?
Sure. I mean, come on, this is my last hurrah.
Well, this is reports and updates. The next one is other.
Oh, no, not reports and updates.
Okay.
Other business, I'm sorry.
So
Always
agenda
ahead of
item number 9, if there's no more reports and updates.
Item number 9, any other city business counselors or others may have relating to Lewiston City Government.
Counselor Lyson, take it away.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the staff for, 4 years of support. And this isn't an easy position to do. It is an easy job, but with the kind of quality staff that we have, and they're sitting right over there, and other people, makes the job a lot easier. And I hope we've moved the city forward. I remember when we first came to the council, a bunch of us 4 years ago, I think a lot of people said, oh my God, what's going to happen? And look at what's happened is that Mike Marcotte and I can come to a common ground in a meeting of minds, eventually. So, and tonight, I think everything passed either 7-0 except the abstention of yours. So that's pretty indicative of this council, that we often come with different views, and we can come to a common ground and even support projects, that take a leap of faith. And I appreciate that, and people keeping an open mind. And again, I just can't thank staff enough for, making this job easier than it would be if we had to do a lot of the heavy lifting ourselves. So again, it's been my privilege to serve my community, and I don't think you've seen the last of me, but I'll probably be in the audience heckling you guys or who's ever up here, or encouraging you to take some strong votes. But again, I think I deserve some time off, so.
Councilor Marcotte.
I guess I will take a different approach. I'm sure not totally unexpected. In light of a letter that I had received in my councilor email box yesterday, which was quite hard-hitting and aimed at the city administrator, first of all, the individual should ask not what the city administrator can do for the individual, but what the individual can do for oneself. But to turn that towards, because a lot of the content was right up my alley as far as finances and the future of Lewiston with respect to the impact on budgets and such. Mr. Administrator, have you ever calculated the break-even point of the impact of low-income housing, increased social spending, and its spin-off effects on our budget? And in comparison to our rate of return, where is that break-even or saturation point? There is a point when absorption can no longer be met. There must be a point where we go too far to be able to sustain our community. Can you give me an expectation date when the city goes bankrupt? There must be an algorithm for this. And I would ask that you please provide me and my successor with this information. I had prepared this before I even thought about how tonight would play out, so it does come across a little bit of a sour note, but there is a concern out there in the community with a lot of the projects that went through the pipeline this summer, and a couple more that have been proposed and pitched. But the more that we can hope on the Saxon project and others, maybe we can make that turn. I did have a second issue that came across my plate in the last couple of weeks. And again, Mr. Administrator, I have an issue to address with respect to a Facebook post and comments by employees of the city. This clearly violates professional ethics. This isn't personal. It is about the proper procedure of conducting business with any person in the city of Lewiston. The moment we resort to making personal Facebook comments, attacks, name-calling, when we have lost our municipal integrity, and I'll share the post with you after the meeting.
Thank you.
So I have some things that I would also like to say, and I wrote them down because I'm hoping that having something to read will prevent the waterworks from shooting out of my eyeballs. So I guess I just want to start by saying what an honor and privilege it has been to serve this city and its residents as both a councilor and as the accidental mayor. I've genuinely enjoyed every second of my time here, good, bad, or indifferent, and I just want to acknowledge the hard and tireless work of the staff we have here in the city of Lewiston. So from administration to our finance team to the staff in our city clerk's office, in our zoning and code enforcement office, economic and community development, social services, and everyone that I am leaving out that works in this building, our fire department, our police department, everyone in public works. I have been able to do this job for the past 9 months because of the support that I've received from each and every one of you. And there were days when I was ready to throw in the towel, as I think Dennis knows better than anyone else. But somehow one of you managed to keep me on track and working for the residents of this city, which I love. And while I feel a bit like I'm handing my baby off to someone else, I can feel good about that, knowing that we have a capable new mayor and incoming city council, and that they all have you all to rely on in the same way that I have over the past 6 years. So thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. On behalf of the city staff, I just want to thank all of the councilors for their service. All of you, I think, have contributed. I know Mike keeps us very much on our toes with the questions he asks and the detail.
Right down to the very last minute.
And the detail he goes into. And very much appreciate everything that you've done. Be aware that you still are in office until January 6th. The next Tuesdays that we hold open for special meetings are Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, so don't block off those for any wild parties or anything. And then, of course, we have some people returning. We're looking forward to continuing to work with the returning counselors as well. So have a happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, and all of that good kind of stuff. I hope we don't have to see you again until January 6th.
What? Go ahead. No, go ahead. It's my last meeting. What do I care?
Hi, Heather Everly, Barry, Jolene. I wanted to thank you and your husband for being so accessible when you were my counselor in Ward 6. It was an experience I never really had. I also wanted to say thank you to Jim, because you've been a mentor to me since I moved to Lewiston, and it was really hard for some of the stuff that I was involved in because I think the biggest blow is that I disappointed you. And I'm really happy that we've been able to amend things and make everything's okay. And Mayor Cloutier, I know that I've been a thorn in your side, but
Sometimes.
it's really important to me that everybody's held accountable. And I know that you came into a situation that you weren't ready for. You were so busy with Bates, your child, your family, your mom, just everything, all these committees that you're part of. And I understand that you did the best that you could. And I do appreciate that you did pick up the ball because you are way better than who we had before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Ray, seconded by Counselor Lyson. All those in favor? Nope, out.
Yes.